Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondent Club of Japan. My name is Pio D'Emilia. I'm moderating today this very, very interesting conference by Mr. Jiro Ishimaru, a guy that has been doing a lot of research and activity toward having more direct information from North Korea. And our senpai, should I say, Mr. Bradley Martin, author of a very, very big and exhaustive book on Konnatsui desu yo. On Kim Jong-il. The name of the book is Under the Loving Care of the Fatherless. It's on sale, I think, even on the club yet. So today you may have two chances to buy this one, which is just out, and as a background.
Mine you have to get from Amazon. It's not at the club.
Oh, sorry, it's not anymore at the club. It's sold out. But you can get it through Amazon, of course, or you can just download it. I don't think we need much introduction for both people. Rather, I should really go through the speeches and then Q&A. The North Korean situation of human rights is probably right now not on the top priorities of media, but still is an unsolved issue, and the issue that all those who live in this part of the world and every people in the world should be concerned about. I have also been several times in North Korea, and it is a great honor for me to MC the conference of these two authoritative friends and guests, because they have done a lot in order to disseminate fresh and direct information from North Korea. There is, I think we will be a kind of different format today. We will have a translation for the Japanese speech by Mr. Ishimaru, but then we will have just whispering from our interpreter, Madame Takamatsu, for the questions in Japanese. So let me give the microphone to Bradley. Thank you very much. And please turn off your K-type. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello? Hello? Okay. Thank you, Pio. It's an honor to have our talk emceed by such an authoritative North Korea watcher as your good self. I'm the second banana here. Can you hear this? Is this coming through the microphone? I'm the second banana, but I'm speaking first just to put things into context before we get to our main speaker, who is Ishimaru-san, who has really done some incredibly great things. So let me just give you a little background and how I see this development of something that's very exciting that I think is happening in our business. When I first arrived here in Tokyo in 1977, the mood around the club was still pretty high, even 3 years after the infamous or famous Kakue Tanaka visit to the club, when Tanaka-san was questioned so intensely about the allegations of corruption in Bungei Shunju that he got up and walked out. And of course, you recall the moral of the whole story was it took the club, it took the foreign correspondents to get that news out, not only to the world, but to most Japanese, because the Bungei Shunju, being a monthly magazine, was ignored by the mainstream Japanese media until that wonderful day when they had to take note of it because it was all over the world. So this gets us into a discussion of the importance of the local media to anybody who's a foreign correspondent. And you know, in Japan, in nearly all countries, we are greatly, greatly dependent on the local media. We have to, if we don't read it ourselves, we have to get somebody to read it for us. Now, what do you do if you're covering North Korea? There are no news media in North Korea. There are media, but they are not news media. They don't offer anything that we would recognize as news, nothing even remotely like news. So this is the kind of situation that those of us, many of you here, including myself, have always faced in covering North Korea. So what did we do about it? Well, I did basically three things when I was writing my book, and I've talked about them here in the club before, so I'm not going to go into detail, but if anybody has questions, raise the questions. I had a tripod of methodologies by the time I was working on my book, which was early 1990s, sort of developed over the previous years. And I don't know if I wouldn't say perfected, but anyway, I got into the groove with them while I was working on that book. And one leg, of course, was just old-fashioned shoe leather reporting. Somehow you get into the country, you beg, you plead, you send cables, you tell them how wonderful your obscure newspaper is. I told them that the Baltimore Sun was to political reporting as the Wall Street Journal was to economic reporting. And they bought it and invited me in, along with the Wall Street Journal, Mike Tharp. This was 1979, my first trip. So you get in somehow, or, and you get in, and you're going to, of course, have many, many impediments to what you can do while you're there. You're going to be trailed or guided all the time by handlers. So it's not a totally satisfactory way of doing on-the-ground reporting by any means. Well, you can also go to the border area outside North Korea, talk to Chinese, talk to ethnic Koreans who live in the Chinese border area, maybe talk to refugees there. Okay, so that's the first leg, and I've discussed it in great detail here on an earlier occasion, so I'm going to jump. The second leg of my method was propaganda analysis, and this is less obvious. I guess most people who read North Korea's official output of so-called news, so-called biographies, so-called art, are just amazed at how bombastic it is and how ludicrous most of it is, and can't imagine sitting down and spending any serious amount of time at it. But I decided that I would, and I learned a lot, which I've also discussed here in the past. But their propaganda analysis is the second leg. The third leg was interviewing defectors, and at the time I was doing it, this was very, very controversial. The left-wing American scholars and British scholars, Australian scholars, all around the world, the left-wing scholars who had united around the Vietnam War and seen the Korean War as a sort of a prologue to that, they said, oh, you can't interview defectors because defectors are just shills for the South Korean regime. They just say whatever the South Koreans want them to. And besides that, they're malcontents. And anyway, they'll say bad things. Well, what they really meant was they'll say bad things about North Korea. And what the left scholars wanted to hear was bad things about South Korea. Even long after South Korea democratized, the left scholars still just couldn't quite believe it. They wanted to hear bad things about South Korea, not North Korea. So that was very controversial at the time. And that essentially, what I was doing and what some others were doing, Barbara Demick recently came out with a best-selling book, which I hear is shortlisted for the National Book Award. And her method was interviewing defectors. So this, for us foreign correspondents, was the state of the art, I would say. but not anymore, okay? I finished my book in 2004, and already people like Ishimaru-san had begun their work, and now in the last 5 years, and especially in the last 3 or 4 years, I would say, their results have just become amazing. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about people who actually get information from inside North Korea, from people who are still inside North Korea. This is just a wonderful development for our field, for journalism. Now, it's true that some governments have done this in the past, South Korean government in particular, every chance they got. But whenever they were quoted by usually South Korean news organizations, it was always an anonymous official, and he would not tell you where he heard it, of course. It was intelligence, right? So if you were like those left-wing scholars, if you were inclined not to believe a word of it, you would say, oh no, that's just the South Korean government talking. That's just ridiculous. We won't believe that. So we needed another way of getting information directly out of North Korea from people living in North Korea. And that's what these people have done. There are two types of NGOs that are doing this. One type is working for outside audiences, like Ishimaru-san's wonderful organization, which put out this book here, Rimjingang. This organization normally publishes in Korean and Japanese. And publishing in Japanese, that makes them, I believe, the only one of the NGOs that I'm talking about that are actually here, headquartered here in Japan. So he's your very own representative of what's happening in this field. These include Daily NK, which is the way I start my day. It is I've talked to the people there. They proclaim very high journalistic standards. They say they double check everything they get, as Ishimaru-san does. He'll tell you about it. So I think, and Daily NK is in English for those of you who are not fluent in Korean or can't find it otherwise. Daily NK is in English, and if you're not reading it, you should, because every day they've got about 4 or 5 articles on there. Just the other day they had one that said the service car industry is under crackdown, and it had a long article by a defector reporter working for Daily NK saying, here's what the service car industry is. It's essentially the basis of North Korean transportation now. So you've got these cars that maybe they belong to some government agency, or maybe they're privately owned and then they're registered to some government agency just for secrecy, just to get through the paperwork. And they are going around hiring out to haul freight. This is a wonderful article. And the crackdown, they're suggesting, could be just as serious as the crackdown on the markets. And which is both of these organizations, Rimjingang and Daily NK, have pioneered in covering that crackdown. In his case, the first chapter in this book is just amazing. It's a very, very long interview with a highly placed North Korean economic official, and he tells you in great detail how that economy collapsed, exactly what happened to the North Korean economy. This interview occurred in 2006, so the Japanese and Korean readers saw it 4 years ago. We're getting it 4 years later. It's still great stuff. It's revolutionary to have this available. All of us who have not seen it before, I had not seen it before, nobody had thought to translate it for me. It's absolutely wonderful stuff, and so is a lot of the other material in this really fine book, which I did a little copy editing on it, but this is Ishimaru-san's book, and he has just done a wonderful job.